this thing, I thought about a couple things. Where's that? The children left, right? Is there a parent or grandparent of the little boy who had the red hoodie on with the hair spiked? Who is that? Oh, good. Okay, so I was so jealous, and I wanted to be able to give him to choose something out of my candy bag because I was impressed with that hairstyle. I don't know who did it. Okay, so why don't you both just take? Oh, you're not mom. Oh, okay. Take one for him.
I take him though. I mean.
And take one for you. While we're at it.
I don't know what he likes.
You take something while I'm right here. And then we're going to have it passed around anyway. I did hear one of the other youth said, "Oh, neat, the candy dude is here." I'm glad she didn't say Candyman because that's a horror film, right? It's like, oh, it's not that was not the impression I wanted to leave. So, would you help get these passed around? If you're going to grieve, you should grieve with sugar. I couldn't bring banana splits or whatever. The other thing I thought of was that bag that Lee has. Is this common? He has one of the children come up with a bag to have something in the bag. All right, this is the last time I had youth, and they brought up. The last time I had youth bring something up was a number of years ago, and I've had this modern hairstyle for, 35, 40 years. So, anybody want to guess what my youth brought up in that bag? A hairbrush. Now, that hairbrush was not like a normal hairbrush. This hairbrush had no bristles. They thought they were funny. So I put it on my desk, and it was on my desk for numbers of years. I don't know where that brush went. So, Lee, it's just a dangerous thing to have youth bring up anything, because whatever they think to put in that bag may not be what you had in mind in that bag. So just a word to the wise. So we did this recentering conference, and Lee and I first started talking about this. I don't know, Lee, when did we start having conversation? It looks like he's the goat that left the building. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Oh yeah, over a year ago. And one of the things that he said is, we were talking about reframing. Now, reframing is you can take the picture into a framing company, and they will take that picture and put it in a different frame, and it just changes the perspective of that. Everybody understand that? I mean, it's just what it is. I saw that out in Colorado when I was out there with my wife, where I went into an art gallery, and here's this beautiful mountain range of the Rockies, and here it was where somebody either took pictures or did art, brush art of it in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, in springtime, in snow, and at different sceneries, and it changed the perspective of those mountains, right? So, I mean, everybody understands that's how art works. So he talked about reframing, and then Lee said, well, I don't know, we're into this thing for a couple months in discussions, and he says, I'm not sure that reframing is really what God is speaking to me about. And I thought, well, okay, because sometimes it's not about reframing, but it's about changing the picture itself. Forget the frame, what's the picture? And so I thought, well, let me think. Yeah, actually that's better. Because one of the mistakes that I see for us in our lives, whether it's church or it's Christians or whatever, sometimes God talks about reframing. Is that fair? But sometimes God says, it's not about reframing. You have the wrong picture at the center. And that needs to be changed. Sometimes it is God's idea. And actually, if you start in Genesis, work your way all the way through those books in the Old Testament, move into the New Testament, go all the way to the end of the book of Revelation, you see actually this idea of recentering, of God changing the picture over and over. He's not reframing anything. He's actually taking that picture out and changing the picture. So I'll give you a couple examples. So when God created the heavens and the earth, and he created man, and he's looking down at Adam and saying, something wrong with this picture. Do you remember what it was? Yeah. Of course, afterwards, he might have wanted to retract that picture, but we'll go with the recording piece, is he said, hey, it's not good for Adam to be alone. And he had to take that picture of Adam with the animals and creation, and all of a sudden had to take that picture out and put Eve into the picture. You catch this? It's a new picture. It's not a reframe. It's a new picture. Then you can just stay in Genesis during that first 3 chapters, and it's flipping through pictures like crazy. Because once they get in there and they had kids, how many of you noticed when you had kids, it wasn't reframing, it's changing the picture. You got kids in this picture now, and you go, woohoo, it's a whole new ball game. And for us men to change and actually recenter, where now your wife, your lover, your soulmate now becomes a mother. And how does that change the dynamic when your wife now becomes a mother? Guys, does the picture change? And does it change in her mind? It does, doesn't it? So they have Cain and Abel, and you get some hints, digging in a little deeper into Genesis 3, when you start hitting, here's Cain and Abel, and you recognize things aren't going well in the family. And all of a sudden, Cain kills his brother Abel. And now that picture comes out and a new picture goes in. And it just gets worse. So you go down another chapter in Genesis, and you have a man by the name of Lamech who now kills somebody for insulting him, and he brags about it. God, this is not going good. Then you have the flood. Is this reframing or is this recentering? It's recentering. It's drastic, isn't it? And so then you have them getting off the ark, and you've got Noah, and God says there's some things are going to be the same, but there are many things that are going to be different. One is now you're going to eat animals. That is recentering, isn't it? And so now the fear of man is going to be on animals. That's recentering. So you just keep going. You get the Tower of Babel. They think they can avoid a flood, and so the world decides to build this tall tower so that they'll never be judged again by floods. And God says, pull that picture up, we're going to stick another picture in, and now I'm going to confound their language, and man is going to be scattered all over the earth. That's not reframing. That is recentering. Are you starting to catch on to this idea? Why it is so neat and so good for you as a faith family to say, I think we need to be looking at this idea of recentering. Because you just continue to go. The sin continues in the nation of Israel. They get carried away into exile, actually twice, one with the Assyrians. For the northern 10 tribes, the 2 tribes get carried in captivity with the Babylonians. Everything is different. And so then they kind of come back in and start to take the area over again. But it's like humanity at its best and worst, all in one. They start to fall away again, and all of a sudden there's 400 years of silence. Malachi to the New Testament, God quit speaking. How would that be traumatic for us? They sought to hear from God, and there was silence. No prophets acting. And during that time, the Israelites couldn't stand not hearing from God, so they created their whole theology about angels. That's where the old arguments come. How many angels can sit on the head of a pin? Or just a practical outworking. Any carpenters in here? Anybody do any carpentry work? Oh, they're way up there. So you're carrying an 8-foot board. All right, this is part of the discussion they had. You're carrying an 8-foot board as a carpenter, and before you'd go like this, you go, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me. Because they thought then what was happening is there were angels. God wasn't speaking, but you can't live that way, so they created all the theology of angels. The angels are surrounding them, and you certainly didn't want to hit one with an 8-foot plank. Then, all of a sudden, you get John the Baptist's father serving in the temple, and all of a sudden, he hears God's voice in the Holy of Holies. after 400 years of silence. I can't even imagine. That's not reframing, that's recentering. Jesus comes on the scene, it's recentering. Every time Jesus confronts the disciples about their misunderstandings about the world, it is recentering. You get into the book of Revelation, and there's letters to how many churches? 7. It's not reframing, it is recentering. Aren't you glad that Bethel, Center Bethel, Church of God, is in the recentering process? Isn't that cool? I'm so excited. And what it suggested to me is the pastor and the leaders of the faith family here has been hearing from God. And they're willing to take on the idea of recentering. Are you glad? It's exciting. It's an adventure. An adventure has excitement, exhilaration, and lots of emotions, and danger. And danger. And risk-taking. All the things I love. Be glad that Lee is your pastor, not me. God only knows where I might try to lead you guys into traffic somewhere and say, run, run! So I'm so excited. I'm glad to be here. And I want to deal with some passages that really do have to do with recentering in pretty dramatic ways. And but I have let's show the first slide, just so they get the idea. Do that. So I'm going to show you, you can see it on YouTube if you want to show to your friends and go through this several times. This is called Maybe It Is About the Nail, but that's not the original title. The original title, if you YouTube it, says this: it's not about the nail. So, show the video.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? We can work it out.
So you say it's not about the nail, but maybe, just maybe, what? It is about the nail. I'm sorry if this reflects your marriage. I can only apologize and maybe recommend, or Lee can recommend, good counselor for you. It certainly has application to marriages, I understand that, but what I discovered, it has applications to churches, to faith communities, when they call and say, we have such pain and agony. And it's just throbbing ache. We just don't know what to do. We've tried everything. And all of our sweaters are snagged. Does it have application to faith families? Everything we've tried has only been a snag. So, before we go any further, I want you to give me some input. It's kind of like pop. You've thought about this stuff. This isn't new kinds of thoughts. What snags do you think this faith community or other faith communities, churches, whatever you want to call them, what snags do you think they've encountered? What hang-ups, what headaches do they have that they can't seem to get past? Ooh, boy, reluctance to change. Big snag, isn't it? That's a huge snag. Huge. Even though when we hire new pastors, new staff, one of the messages that always get communicated to the new guy or gal is, we want to change. But what he said is true, is more true. They might want other people to change, but they don't want to change, because that's just something in us. There is so much research about this. They discover in the medical field. Doctors write about this stuff. Psychologists write about this. And one in particular was a doctor who did all this research about people who have illnesses, and they come in and they complain and talk about the aches and the pains and the illnesses, and the doctor writes out a prescription or an action plan on how you can move past this snag in your life, and say with me, 90% of people will not do it. 90% will not carry it out. You need to exercise, you need to cut out carbs, or you need to take this medicine for 10 days or 2 weeks. 90% of us will not do it. Isn't that amazing? Even if their life, and this is what doctor says, even if their life depends upon it, they will not do it. Not facts, not force, won't do it. So one of the things they say that is typical with people, for us taking medicines, we only take medicine until when? Until we feel better, and we don't finish the medication, even though on the side of the medication it says, take this medicine until it's finished. And the majority of people will only take medicine until they feel better. Are we nuts or what? And notice I use the proverbial we, because that is the human dilemma that we have. I actually, there's a passage in the New Testament where Jesus approaches somebody, and it seems mean. It just seems mean. Where he approaches this person who is crippled down by the water, and he's been down by that water most of his life, and asks this question, do you want to be well? Doesn't it seem like that's a cruel question? It's like, look at me. I'm a cripple. I'm down by the water. There's the rumor that an angel comes down periodically and stirs the water, and out of stirring the water, whoever gets down in there first gets healed. And Jesus said, do you want to get well? And he says, well, nobody ever carried me to the water. Wah, wah, wah. Seems kind of mean. Here's what I have come to by way of conclusion. I could be wrong. God can change my mind. But it's humanity, which that humanity includes whom? All of us, yeah, me included. That most of the time we would rather remain in the state in which we are because we're comfortable with our pains and aches and our complaints. I got two people said, yep. How about the rest of you? Yep. For me, yep. Yep. Rather than going to the doctor about my lack of sleep, or I feel like a rotisserie chicken at night, it comes with age, that if I lay on my back, pretty soon, if my wife doesn't smack me, I'm snoring, and my body's going, I don't know what, my tongue's choking me or what. So she will nudge me over to my side, so I roll over to my left side, and I'm there for maybe 45 minutes, and pretty soon this knee on top of this knee makes my knee ache. And so my left side of my body is beginning to ache. Well, it needs a reprieve. So it's saying, don't stay in this position. This is hurting like the dickens. You're not sleeping anyway. So I roll to my right side, and my left side says, oh, that feels so good. But then now my left knee is on top of my right knee, and I'm on my right side, and now this shoulder's aching. So all night long, I'm this rotisserie chicken just changing what part of me hurts. But I've learned not to complain to my wife. Because what do you think my wife's going to say? Go to the doctor. And then what's he going to do? He's going to give me pills. I hate pills. So I'll just continue to be a rotisserie chicken. Maybe it is about the nail. Oh, so we only got one answer. I don't even care if I finish this. I just want your input. What are the other snags? Our reluctance to change. What other snags do we have? Oh man, yeah. How fast or so slow that change never quite happens, or we change too fast and it's disruptive. Yeah, that's a snag. How fast do we go with this? What other snags? Transitions are a snag. How do we get from here to here? It's a snag. Fear. Ooh. Well, that weighs in, doesn't it? Fear is a real snag. The fear of the unknown. Sometimes it's not a fear of the unknown, it's a fear of the known. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm raiding a crack house at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the police officer behind me says, Shoemaker, I'm sorry if I told you the story, but he says, Shoemaker, do you have your vest on? And I said, yeah, Jerry, I always have my vest on. And he was in front of me to start with, and he said, do you have your vest? And I said, yeah. He says, good, you go in first. Why? He says, because if they shoot you, or if the dog attacks you and you die, you at least know where you're going to go if you die. He says, I don't. That's a snag. Snag for me, too. I don't want to go in first. I'm not so afraid of getting shot. I'm afraid of the Doberman. I can reason with a guy with a gun. You can't reason with a dog that's been taught to attack. So it's usually the first person goes in is take out the dog, kind of a thing. But fear, it's powerful. People say, are you afraid when you do that? You're stupid if you're not. What other kind of snags do you see in churches? Oh, there's so many. Don't make me name them, because, all your toes are going to hurt. If I start naming them, it's better that you step on your own toes. Come on, what are they? Somebody say, pardon? Rules. Oh, some snags. Oh, yeah. Oh, language snags. There are language snags everywhere. I heard some today. Do you want me to say them or not say them? Maybe you won't have me back in April. Or if you do, you'll relegate me to the basement. Only. So, you got one? Oh, yeah, we've always done it this way before. We've never done it this way. We've always done it this. Yeah, that's a snag. The other one I always have fun with is language, and we talked about it in a recentering last night. I'll start with the easiest one, and I've done this here before, so this should not be too big of a shock, because I've done it here. You may not remember, but you call this space what? The sanctuary. And there are lots of rules about sanctuaries. And I go, man, this should be a no-brainer for us. This is not a sanctuary. You know it in your head, but you don't have it in your heart where real behavior is going to come from. This is not a sanctuary. But will you stop calling sanctuary? Probably not. Even though you know it's not true. Because the truth is, what's the truth? We are the sanctuary. We, you, if you are a Jesus follower, where does God's Spirit reside and take up residence? In our hearts. You know that's theology. That's good theology. It's right theology. Is this true or not? If ever you're going to say amen, it'd be now. Because it's the truth. It's what the Bible teaches. We are God's sanctuary. This building is not and never can be. God said it can't. He said you can't build with hands anything that will be my sanctuary. Because I've already done the work and the job, and I created you. And that's where my Spirit is going to dwell. That needs to settle in, doesn't it? Because we treat this space better than we treat each other. We get critical and nasty and accusatory with one another and pick at one another and treat this space with more respect. Is that the truth? It is, isn't it? It really is. I am so grateful for the changes you made up front. It's good change. But I know pastors who have lost their jobs, their ministries in a local congregation because they did things like that. Is that true? Your pastor, a number of years ago, actually it was my first encounter with Pastor Lee, was in another church. And it had grown under his ministry and under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit leading them. They were growing. They packed out this space, not in the sanctuary, because it's not a sanctuary, but in their worship space. Because that's what this is, right? It's worship space. Unless you make it multi-purposeful, and then it's a multi-purpose space. But they bumped up against it, and they kept bumping up against it, and the property was such that there's no room to either side to bust out walls and expand. The only way to expand was to take out that front wall, and they had more property, they could expand it out. But on that front wall was a mural. And that mural was painted by one of the people in their congregation. True story. I'm brand new to the denomination, and I went with Keith Radersdorf, who was going to do some consulting for them. And it was clear that Pastor Lee and the leaders couldn't touch that wall, or over half the congregation would leave. And what happened was Pastor Lee left because he didn't have a choice, and that would have been a recommendation I would have given. But think about that. That happens in making changes to a nursery, makes a change in whether the toilet paper goes over the top or underneath, with the paint on the walls, or the plaques we put on our walls, like those kind of things. I got in trouble 40 years ago for taking those plaques off the wall that listed how much was given. Because I noticed that when I was preaching or teaching, where were people staring and thinking about the offerings? I thought, get those nasty boards down off of there. Put them at the back if you want. But otherwise, the focus was on those things and the giving. And I'm going, no, ain't going to happen. I took them down, and people said, you better put them back up. Nope. I don't know where I put them. I forget a lot of things. Trustees took them down, and I went to plausible deniability. I don't care what you do with them. I just don't ever want to see them again. Aren't you glad for Lee? Hey, hey, hey. Yes, you ought to be. All right. So let's do some of this thing. And again, we won't. What time am I supposed to be done, Lee? You mean now? All right. All right. So snags. There are so many more snags that you could give. Oh, do you want one more language piece? And maybe I'll just quit with this one. I'll do the other piece later. You want the other language one? It's a hot one. You may not invite me back. See, a sanctuary one's easy. That was easy, right? Because it's just scripture. It's just Bible. It's trying to get my head and my heart working together and understanding that we are all what? We're all the sanctuary. We're the temple. We're the place where God's Spirit resides. And boy, that should aid us in our community, shouldn't it? And how we treat one another with respect and love and compassion. This other one, oh, Lee, please invite me back. But again, it's just old school. And it's the one where we say, ushers, would you come up? Because now we're going to take up, that ain't the word you use. It's just only half of it. We're going to take up our tithes and offerings. Oh, it's real hard for me not to faint and fall off the front pew and make a demonstration of myself. No, no, 1,000 times no. Why do we as the church shoot ourselves in the foot with our language over and over and not realize the cultures we have created with the language that becomes not only barriers to people who are not Christians, but to barriers to people who are Christians? Let me walk us through this. You want to walk through this real quickly? Say yes. Because you do, because it's really helpful. It's encouraging, and it will make us smile. Well, that might be pushing it. So if I say the word tithe, just use the word. It's only used 4 times in the New Testament. That should help you a little bit with what's going on here, right? And those 4 times it's used, it's always referring back to where? Old Testament. That should be a second clue. How many times it's used, and the fact it's always referring back to the Old Testament should be a clue. Maybe we should rethink the picture. Fair? Are you with me so far? Just walk this path, step at a time, step at a time. You're not going down a pea patch, I promise you. I'm not going to lead you over a cliff. I'm just going to walk you into truth. So the minute I use the word tithe, what questions come up when you use the word tithe? Now, some of you have been Christians long enough, and you've been through these debates and stuff, and so you've kind of settled in on whatever. But you think of people who are new to the idea of language within Christianity, what questions come up with the use of the word tithe? So, yeah, how much? What is a tithe? And our typical answer will be 10%. Then the follow-up question always is, yes, is it gross or net? So is this 10% of the whole gross amount, or is this 10% of my take-home pay? That's always part of it, is it not? Why would somebody ask that question? What are they asking for? You have no, I have no.
That's what you bring home, right?
Yes.
This is what you're supposed to.
Well, you wish you could take home.
10% of something I don't have.
Well, that's a good question. So, stay out of the debate because it gets better. Okay. So what happens is immediately when people ask, is that gross or net, you're asking what is the minimal, you got it? What is the minimal amount I'm required to give? So once you use the word tithe, and here's the phrase, you are creating minimalist thinking. You got it? When you say tithe, you're creating minimalist thinking. Because you're thinking, what's the minimal amount I am obligated to give? Everybody, you got to stay on the path and recognize that's what's being asked. If our giving is to reflect the nature and character of God, where does minimalist thinking fit in? Does it fit in anywhere? Absolutely not. And it's interesting that the New Testament tries to move us beyond this by changing the language to reset the cultural picture that fits the nature and character of God. Are you with me? This is what is so exciting. I get goosebumps talking about this. Yes, we might make it. We might get there. We might change the culture because now we're changing our language and changing, not reframing, but the center picture. So, 2 words that come up in the New Testament about our lifestyle of giving. None of them talk about tithing. What they do say, it's a lifestyle of generosity and a lifestyle of sacrifice. Those 2 words are the New Testament changing of the picture that reflects the nature and character of God, that God wants it to be reflected in our faith communities. This is so exciting to me, and I've watched it play out and change entire faith family cultures in positive ways. Because God is what kind of a God? Not just. Generous God. Use the language. Hang with me. Stay in the same footprint. It's hard, isn't it? He is so many things, but when we're talking about this, it says he's a generous God. How does God give to us? Generously. And how we give should match that, right? But is God just a generous God, or is God also a sacrificial God? Come on. He's a sacrificial God, isn't he? He gave it all. He gave his son generously and sacrificially. So when I talk about giving in faith families, I never would talk about tithes. I talk about a lifestyle of generosity and sacrifice. And I say, hey, today we're going to focus on what does it look like under the inspiration of God's Spirit to you as giving individuals and families to give generously. Now we're ready to give. And let it reflect what generous giving would look like that matches God as generous. And that will go on. Then eventually, I am going to say, you know how we always talk about a generous lifestyle of giving? It's reflected how we live. It's reflected how we give money, what we give to the body and to the world. But I said, you know, God also is a sacrificial God. So let's take some time and pray before our ushers come forward and ask God's Spirit to guide you as individuals and families. What does it look like to give sacrificially today for you? It's transformational. I've done this practically with ushers coming forward, passing out $100 here and $100 there, and asking people to take up a tithe and take up your tithes. I get $8 and I get $10. You made $100. I get some people who will give 10. I get some people who give 8 because it's the net and gross thing. You get it? I say, give me my money back. I take my money back. Said, okay, now forget that whole language. You don't have tithe even in your vocabulary. We're going to be thinking about what it looks like to give generously. Let's pray, ask God's Spirit to speak to you. I jumped up from, this has literally happened in the Eastern region, I jumped up from $35 out of the 100 and $45 out of 100. Took my money back. It's my money. Give me my money back. We have one more experiment. So then I said, okay, you know how we've done this before. And I said, let's ask God what it looks like for me to give individually, my family to give sacrificially. I give them the $100 back. I got $65, $85. And the guy who gave the 85 said this. Wait, Pastor, don't. you need to hear what I think God was saying to me. I just didn't obey. I sensed God's Spirit was saying, give the whole 100. And the people in the congregation said, what just happened? The culture was changed because we changed the language. Are you with? You see what happens? In one setting. And then some wiseacre. There's always one in a group. Who's the wiseacre in this group? Who's the one with the quick wit? Ed said, Pastor, wait a minute. They knew it was your money. I laughed and laughed. So anyway, I'll come back sometime and we'll do another nail. But language and culture is a nail that's problematic. Are you with me? Do I think it will slip out about tithes and offerings? Yeah, I'm pretty realistic. But I also recognize that this is going to set in you, that nail's going to hang in there until somebody says it's time to pull it. Lee?
I thought I was going to take another offering up. And,
Hey,
I
may be
didn't-
worth it. I know
didn't
churches who have done that.
Yeah. I
God
told
bless you.
I told the guys upstairs. I said, you give Bill 5 minutes, he'll take an hour. We did some taping earlier in between the services for our for the upcoming recentering and intros into our streaming aspect. And Jason's doing the taping, and Bill and I are talking. We did one intro, and Jason said, "We do this about a minute." Well, he told me upstairs a 7-minute intro into it. So we might have to it was good, but no. So thanks, Bill.